Hey folks, it's Rob, and welcome back. We're continuing our series on the Monstrous Compendium Appendix for the Mystara setting from 1994 by TSR. Um, as you can see, we have a little unusual item today, and but this is part of the quirkiness and delight of early Dungeons and Dragons settings is that they do like to mix in a little bit of space opera science fiction. So. Um, we'll get into it. But you can see we have a lovely little steel machine robot thing. Has like I don't know, it has a bit of a froggish aspect to it. Personally, I feel it has these like fly eyes, but the head kind of comes over vaguely. I don't know, turtle, lizard, froggish. Mm, Maybe it's just me. I don't know. What do you think? Let me know. But um, let's get into the stuff because we got stuff to cover. So this is called a mech. Yeah, and it's climate, terrain, or ruins, or any. Frequency very rare. They are solitary, active anytime. They don't have a diet. They are non-intelligent. No treasure. Alignment purely neutral. Only one appears. Their armor class is -4, which I'll remind you is descending armor class. This is quite hard to hit. Movement is 9, so it's not super fast. A human moves 12 typically if they're unladen. Hit dice 11 to 16. The two hit AC 0. It depends on the number of hit dice. In this case, 11 to 12 is 9. 13 to 14 is 7, and on 15 to 16 hit dice, to hit a armor class 0 is 5 on a d20. It gets 2 attacks. The damage per attack is 5d6 plus 10 for each fist, of which it has 2. That is like a fairly well enhanced fireball that your mid-level player might throw. Because that's 15 to 40 points of damage. Paralyzing Breath is its special attack. It's also immune to spells. It just has spell immunity as a special defense. No magic resistance, however. It is large or huge, 15 to 25 feet tall. So, possibly the size of just your garage or maybe the size of a house. They are fearless, effectively unbreakable morale. The XP value depends on the number of hit dice. At 11, it's 12,000, 12, 13,000, 13, 14,000. I think you got the idea how this goes. 14 is 15,000, 15 is 16,000, and 16 is 17,000 XP. Right. Mechs, possibly a derivative of the word mechanical, you don't say, are huge, metallic creations fabricated by a long-dead race of inhuman insect-like sorcerers. Most mechs resemble their creators, having barrel-like chests and long, barbed, double-jointed arms and legs. However, mechs resembling giants, lizards, and other creatures have been found too. So this is meant to be insect-like, and I guess the eyes are insectish. The rest of it's very much not like an insect. Um, but that's the bilateral symmetry, isn't it? Right? Um, Mechs usually serve as guardians and only attack beings who intrude into the area they protect. However, characters might encounter one of the few wild mechs that wander as marauders. These unintelligent creatures do not communicate, but follow the simple verbal orders that their creators gave them long ago. Rumors state that on rare occasions, a powerful individual has learned how to usurp control of a mech, at least for a while. Combat. Mechs vary in power. To randomly determine the number of hit dice of a given specimen, roll 1d6 and add 10. Yeah. A mech responds to motion. It cannot see a creature that remains perfectly still. The best defense against a wandering mech is to remain stock still, out of its path, and wait for it to pass by. This requires a character to remain motionless for approximately 1d3 plus 1 rounds, so half a d6 plus 1. Enough time for the mech to move out of range. In order to remain motionless, a character must make a dexterity check each round. I mean, I would have thought you could remain fairly motionless regardless, but I don't know. Maybe a pussy willow has a fern has tickled your nose and you sneeze. I don't know. Mechs attack by striking. Actually, I would say the check. See, the check is for each round. I would make the check initially that you drop and stop moving without being noticed, right? And once you're down, unless there's something extenuating, like the party's talking or they're doing something, trying to do something as well, I wouldn't actually want to do an art check at that point. But your game, your rules, of course, and this is how they're presenting the monster for us to use. But I think a character is generally capable, unless there's some other mitigating factor that is going to prevent them from moving around, that they are capable of stopping moving for, basically a couple minutes, right? But who knows? Maybe you have a hyperactive halfling or something. Maybe someone is suffering from a dance curse. I don't know. But if they're suffering from something like that, they're not going to be able to stop moving. Anyhow, moving on. Mechs attack by striking with their heavy metallic limbs, inflicting 5d6 plus 10 points of damage with each of their 2 mighty fists. So great is a blow from one of these monstrosities that the creature hit by both fists in 1 round must make a saving throw versus paralysis. A failed saving throw means the mech has knocked the victim off its feet, stunned for 1d4 minus 1 rounds. If the saving throw succeeds, the target still falls prone. So, just to illustrate, okay, so let's say we have a more minor one of these, the 11 to 12 hit dice, the smallest one. To hit AC 0 is 9. Now, I currently have in a game I play, my character has plate mail armor, which is, a very good, solid, but non-magical form of armor. And he has a slight dexterity adjustment, and he has a shield. So I get a base AC of 3 for the armor, another 1 point off of that for the shield, so that's 2, and then my dexterity adjustment brings it down to 1. Now, 1 on a 2-hit AC 0 of 9 means the monster has to roll 8 or better on a d20 to hit my character for each strike. Now, that is admittedly a first-level halfling, and it is fairly well equipped, but it is non-magical. Let's say I happen to have a +1 shield and a +1 suit of magic armor, and let's leave the +1 AC adjustment as it is a fighter, and it's probably not not every day that they have high dexterity adjustments, but so another +1 on the shield, a +1 on the armor would bring that down by 2. So from 1 to -1. So this mech would still require 10 or better on a d20. So a 50-50 chance. And actually it's better than 50-50 because it's 10 or better. 50-50 would actually be, you're functionally 10, you have 11 steps in 10 to 20 because it's inclusive. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and then 20, right? It's not 0 to 9, it's 0 to 10 functionally. So, yeah, that's a 55% chance to strike my character twice in a round. And if he manages to land both hits, I have to make a saving throw versus paralysis, and I'll be knocked to the ground regardless. And that's assuming, of course, I can survive those 2 mighty blows. Now, fighters in Dungeons & Dragons will roll a d8 for hit points as they advance and get constitution adjustments. And, they tend to be fairly hardy, but you're still rolling dice and on an average, you're going to get about 4.5 hit points per level. And you're only rolling for like the first 9 levels. After that, they get just a set number of hit points for every level. Above that, I think like 2. Uh, you'll be lucky to have 100 hit points, is what I'm trying to say. To illustrate this, for those who are familiar with the more modern version of the game, and there's no save versus death to avoid dying, there's no quick recovery of health without potent magic powers. Um, if you were to lose, if you say I had a above average high level fighter who had 120 hit points, you'd still be fairly daunted by the fact that you just got hit for 15 to 40 points of damage twice. So that's where we are on that. Just to put this to scale, right? This is meant to be an incredibly intimidating monster for the party to face. Moving forward, these creatures use their effective strength of 22 to great effect by grabbing opponents with a successful attack roll, lifting them off the ground, and hurling them 1d6 times 10 feet away. Victims suffer d6 damage for every 10 feet thrown, plus the mech strength bonus of plus 10 damage. So if it hits you, it's grabbed you and then throws you. Say 30 feet away, that's another 3d6 plus 10 damage. This thing will tear apart a party who's not ready for it. But fortunately, they don't seem to be wildly interested in killing people unless they're interested in killing people, right? Once each turn, a mech can exhale a cloud of paralyzing gas. This cloud, a 10-foot radius sphere centered around the creature, does not obscure vision and remains stationary if the mech moves away. Each creature within it must make a saving throw versus breath weapon for each round spent inside. Failure indicates the victim becomes paralyzed for 1d3 turns. That's 10 to 30 minutes. The gas dissipates in 2d4 rounds. Mechs are immune to most enchantments. Cold-based spells cause them no damage, but have the effect of slow spell on them, and the disintegrate spells destroy mechs that fail their saving throws. So that's one way to deal with it. You could use a disintegrate spell, which is a very potent magic, and hopefully it'll fail its saving throw and you've managed to defeat it. Otherwise, you haven't done anything to it. Poison and attacks directed at a creature's mind have no effect on them. Unsurprising, right? So you can't charm them, you can't sleep them. I don't know what poison would do to this. Acid should work, conceivably. I don't know. Up to you if you want to consider acid a poison. It wouldn't work then. It doesn't seem to be immune to actual weapons, so, there's nothing about it that's particularly overly robust, right? And 10 hit dice, say 12 hit dice, let's say, right? That's potentially about 40, 50 hit points on average, but it could be much higher, could be much lower, right? It depends on how the dice go. Let's see. Habitat. Mechs were created long ago to guard ancient insectoid wizards and their underground strongholds. A few of these fortresses lie on the surface in remote, desolate areas. Mechs encountered within ancient strongholds served a master at the time of their entombment. Most of the time, 90%, the creature's final order was to guard a particular chamber, item, or even an entire floor. In rare cases, its master ordered it to kill anyone who entered the stronghold. I imagine there would be some evidence of that, unless it's been a very, 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 very long time since anyone ever came by, right? Because if it's like, entered the stronghold, smash, dead, body. The thing doesn't care about the body, right? Just leaves it there, right? Sometimes the elements expose a buried stronghold, and a mech manages to escape and wander the countryside, attacking most creatures it encounters and leveling any structures in its path. Such mechs apparently had no master at the time they were sealed up in the stronghold. These masterless creatures, lacking in magical compulsions and safeguards, prove the most dangerous. The secret of creating mechs has been lost for now. Ecology. Except for the ruin the few wild, uncontrolled mechs inflict upon the landscape, most mechs have no effect on their immediate environment. Some mages and sages speculate that a relationship exists between mechs, iron golems, and the apparatuses of Qualish, which those are artifacts, magical artifacts. Feel free to play with that as much as you want. Obviously, that could be the basis of a scenario for a campaign of high-level adventurers, or even a fairly large party of middle adventurers. But be prepared for bad things to happen to your party, right? If they were to throw themselves in a combat encounter at a mech that is storming across the land because they are trying to heroically save the kingdom or whatever, and this thing must be stopped before it continues to wipe out another village, probably someone will be making a heroic sacrifice along the way, right? Probably more than one. Especially if it's a middling party of large group, right? Might be quite good for a one-off or for like a, just like an exposition kind of game. Something of interest. But yeah, mechs. Not to be related with battle mechs from the very popular at the time and still actually quite popular Battletech game, which is how most people were referring to mechs in 1994, because honestly, that stuff was very popular back then. I certainly was playing, and I was lucky enough to be in Chicago, where they had they had BattleTech simulators at Navy Pier. Got to play down there a few times. So it's a tabletop battle. You got mechs, you control them. It was turn-based, but it's also computer games. It's a whole thing. I'm sorry, I'm making a huge pointless diversion of historic gaming, and it's not really relevant to our reading today. Moving forward, we have another kind of construct thing, actually. Or they're magical creatures? Yes, I think they're actually magical creatures. I know, they have no faces again. Amazingly, this scan is not badly faded out. It's not overexposed. The copy I'm holding in my hand, the weapons are just as white and lost as they appear here. And the top of the guy's bald, shiny head is also just as fading into the page as it shows here. His loincloth is just as darkly reddish brown. It's nice to see something finally scanned appropriately here on page 81 of this book. As we are now, I don't know, I think we're approximately about 2/3 of our way through the project. But, nice to see it. At this time, however, the most interesting thing about him is that he's wielding two-handed weapons, it looks like, by half-inching the battle axe and holding a two-handed Zweihander by like the very top of the hilt. So he must be strong. He's got gladiator sandals, and he's got a loincloth, and he's got like 2 pouches on his waist, but he has no face, and he's otherwise a very stereotypical muscular man, and he has 1 bracer. So, probably not a lot of loot for you to get, but maybe those weapons are nice, right? Let's try the name. So, I really see 2 options, and one's more the comedy option than the other, because it reminds me of people ordering fajitas at a Mexican restaurant in Scotland. Fajitas. So we have the to use the comedy use, the Mujina, or we have a Mujina, which I think is probably the proper pronunciation. And I will no longer carry on with that dumb line of comedy. Um, right. Climate terrain, any. Frequency, very rare. Organization, solitary. Okay, so they're, solo items. Uh, activity cycle, any. Diet, omnivore. I don't know where they put food, but okay. Um, intelligence, average, 8 to 10, typical human intelligence. Treasure type E in their lair. They are chaotic evil. 1d4 appear, so I guess the solitary is more like individual family unit or just, I don't know. We'll find out more. Armor class 4, despite all that skin on show. I guess that's quite an effective bracer he's got on the one arm. Movement 12, hit dice 8, to hit AC 0, 13. It gets 2 attacks. Damage per attack is by weapon plus 6 or by weapon plus 6. So each weapon is being hefted by great strength. I'm going to assume that these are melee weapons, but we'll read more later because it'd be interesting if also ranged weapons were also affected, but not thrown, right? Special attack is fear, okay. Special defense is disguise. As no magic resistance, they are size medium, human size, 5 to 7 feet tall. Their morale is elite, 13, and they have a 2,000 XP value. Mujinas are magical creatures created to plague the human race. Lovely. In their natural form, Mujinas look like humans of either sex, except that they have no faces. Where the eyes, nose, ears, and mouth should be, there is nothing. The face looks smooth as an eggshell. However, a Mujina may create an illusion to give its face any appearance it desires. These creatures speak common and their own racial language, which consists of a series of oddly pitched hollow moans and howls, quite unpleasant to the ears of normal humans, demi-humans, and humanoids, which would be like goblins and orcs and whatnot. Combat. The Mujina's great strength 18/100. So this is a kind of strength rating that we have in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons and is carried forward into the second edition of if you roll an 18 strength on a fighter, you then roll D percentile to determine exceptional strength, which will range you from basically 1 to 00, 00 representing 100 in this case. So this is a maximum exceptional humanoid strength, not moving to 19, which is even stronger, but it is inhuman giant level strength. So that's where the plus 6 is coming from, and if that's the case, then it's going to be, yes, melee weapons. So the great strength allows them to handle any two-handed melee weapon in one hand, except for a lance or polearm. They can attack with 2 weapons, 1 in each hand, with no penalties. So functionally ambidextrous as well, right? A Mujina can cause its true face, a blank, to appear at will. Any creature with 5 or fewer hit dice or levels who sees the blank face becomes unnerved and automatically runs in fear for 1d3 rounds at top speed. Creatures with more than 5 hit dice or levels get a chance to resist the effect by making a saving throw versus wands. The why do I want to say Mujina? I don't want to say Mujina. Mujina's true face can be revealed by a successful dispel magic as well. The spell's target resists as an 8th level spellcaster. Revealing the blank face in this manner still causes fear in observers. Mujinas often surprise opponents thanks to their disguise abilities. Also, they have special magic defenses against certain detection spells. If someone casts a Detect Evil or Detect Magic spell on a Mujina, The creature gets a saving throw versus spell. If successful, the Mujina eludes detection. Interesting. So this is great for having a secret villain, but they're chaotic evils, so usually chaotic evils tend to reveal themselves pretty readily. Um, Psionics, however, can spot a Mujina mind easily, so members of this sinister race spend much of their time and effort killing psionically gifted individuals and collecting items that guard the mind. By the same token, Mujinas try to lose or destroy magical items that can ruin their cover, such as medallions of ESP or a gem of true seeing. Now, those magic items definitely exist in Dungeons and Dragons, but psionics do not. At least not for players, right? So it does definitely exist in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and in Second Edition AD&D, it's an expansion book, which is not part of the base rules. At least I think. I remember I definitely have a copy of the expansion book. I don't recall if it's actually in the player's handbook or in the DMG for second edition. Please, if you know, let me know. We didn't use psionics much. We didn't. We sometimes decide, hey, let's play with psionics, but most of the time psionics were not part of the campaigns we would play. So I don't have that much experience with it, beyond using it for particular monsters, because certain monsters have psionic abilities as well. Probably most commonly is the Mind Flayer, the Illithid, like you've seen in Baldur's Gate 3 is popularized, right? Um, that's enough of that diversion. Carrying onwards, Habitat/Society. An unknown power created Mujinas to bring trouble to the races of Mystara. Some priests call them a plague brought on by angry immortals. These creatures, physically and emotionally identical to all others of their kind of the same gender, exhibit vicious hatred towards all species that have individual traits. They especially hate humans, the most diverse of all the races of Mystara. I'm not even going to make a comment about that. How about diversity in Dungeons and Dragons? Barring that one. The faceless creatures most commonly stay in large human cities where they can blend in at will with little fuss. Mujinas often pose as human hirelings, retainers, henchmen, and the like. One may serve faithfully for a long period, biding its time. It exercises an enormous amount of patience and self-restraint, waiting for the right time to attack and kill its companions. Interesting. So, despite being chaotic evil, it's not evil stupid. Okay, I can buy that. However, not all Mujinas are such cold-blooded killers. Many simply want to rob people. Okay. Once again, a Mujina waits for the right time and prefers to strike while everyone sleeps, so victims will not realize they have been robbed until long after it is gone. Some Mujinas take simple pleasure in frightening humans, especially lone travelers. I guess that kind of fits into the chaos thing. Just boo. I felt like it at the time, and it was fun. But those two later things, I mean, the last one especially doesn't play into the I'll play the long con for years, right? But the payoff must be amazing, I suppose, right? I've foiled all your plans and everything's come undone, and my king. uh, and now I will have your head. Something like that, right? Mujinas have no society as humans define it. They sometimes travel together for mutual aid, but never stay together for more than a week if they can help it. On rare instances, several Mujinas will hire on a squad of mercenaries. These asexual beings apparently do not reproduce. Many sages believe a malicious immortal continuously adds to the Mujina population by cursing followers who never strive to stand out from the crowd, making them literally faceless. In the Immortal set for Dungeons and Dragons, you can definitely create your own race of creatures and have them populate on your personal plane. And you could use your spell immortal points to move created creatures to the prime material plane, as the world that but you're most of the gaming happens in. Uh, the dimension of the universe as we know it, right? Um, so that all fits in pretty well, actually, with established mechanics of Immortals. I have no idea what they did with Second Edition and Immortals, honestly. Uh, I'm woefully deficient on Wrath of the Immortals as it is, but that actually was still for the Dungeons and Dragons campaign and not for AD&D Second Edition, which the Mystara setting was starting to be transitioned to. But they never completed that move, and then they got in severe financial trouble, and then of course Wizards of the Coast come along, and they just go and start all over again. Um, Boy, am I full of diversions today. Boy, am I sorry about that. I hope that you at least find them entertaining. Ecology. Some scholars have guessed at a possible link between Mujinas and doppelgangers, citing similarities in methods and operations and attitudes. Mujinas serve no useful purpose in local ecologies unless one believes the dubious theory that they were placed on Mystara to trim the human population. Which could be. But I would say they're probably servants of this. The patron immortal behind them is likely a servant of the sphere of entropy, right? Um, that is enough of that for today. I hope you enjoyed this. And I'm sorry I rattled on so long, because really we didn't get to a third monster today, and I'm already over a half hour. So uh, I hope you have a great day. Goodbye.